The signal from the void, the ice moon Europa held secrets beneath its frozen surface. But Commander Elena Vasquez wasn't interested in what lay below. Her eyes stayed fixed on the deep space monitoring screens in the cramped observation station. 200 years had passed since the Kraxan Empire swept through the solar system like a plague, and humanity had learned to keep watch from the shadows. Elena's coffee had frozen in the low-pressure environment again. She didn't bother heating it. The cold helped her stay alert during these endless shifts, watching for Kraxan patrol ships that might discover their hidden base. Outside the reinforced window, Jupiter loomed massive and eternal, its great red spot a reminder that some things endured even when civilizations fell. The monitoring equipment hummed its familiar tune, a white noise that had become the soundtrack of her life. Elena checked the readings methodically, radiation levels within acceptable parameters. No Kraxan vessel movements detected in the outer system. The weekly supply ship from Ganymede was still 3 days out. Everything normal, everything hopeless. Then the gravitational sensors screamed. Elena's training kicked in before her conscious mind could process what was happening. She silenced the alarms and pulled up the data stream. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, isolating the anomaly. What she saw made no sense. A massive gravitational distortion had appeared near the Kuiper belt, something emerging from hyperspace with a mass signature that dwarfed anything in the Kraxan fleet. The computer ran its analysis, comparing the signature against every known vessel in its database. Kraxan dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, planetary siege platforms. None matched. Elena expanded the search parameters, diving into historical records from before the occupation. The system pinged a match that made her blood run cold. UES Prometheus. United Earth Starship. Humanity's first and only supercarrier. Elena stared at the screen, her mind refusing to process the information. The Prometheus had launched during the evacuation, carrying 30 million colonists in a desperate attempt to establish a seed colony beyond Kraxan reach. The ship had vanished during its emergency jump, lost with all souls aboard. That was 200 years ago. Everyone knew the story. Everyone had mourned the loss, but the signature was unmistakable. The unique quantum resonance of the Prometheus's experimental drive core glowed on her screen like a ghost made real. Elena activated the encrypted communication array, knowing the risk but having no choice. This information couldn't wait. On Earth, in the ruins of what had once been Berlin, David Chen crouched in a basement that served as a resistance command center. The Kraxan occupation forces had reduced the great cities to rubble, keeping humans alive only as a labor force for their strip mining operations. 2 billion people remained from the 8 billion who had called Earth home, and David commanded, perhaps 5,000 fighters scattered across the European sector. The encrypted message from Europa made him drop the ammunition clip he'd been loading. He read it 3 times before calling his lieutenants. Anna Petrov arrived first, her cybernetic arm a reminder of their last failed uprising. Marcus Thompson followed, the former professor now their chief strategist. What's the emergency? Anna asked, noting David's expression. Europa Station reports an anomaly, David said carefully. The Prometheus signature has been detected entering the system. The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief. Marcus was the first to speak. That's impossible. The Prometheus is gone. Has been for 2 centuries. The signature matches perfectly, David insisted. Elena wouldn't risk a transmission unless she was certain. Before anyone could respond, their communications array activated, on a frequency that hadn't been used since before the occupation. The voice that came through was clear, strong, and unmistakably human. This is Admiral Robert Hawkins, commanding officer of the UES Prometheus. To all human forces in the Sol system, we have returned. 200 years ago, we fled as refugees. Today we return as liberators. Humanity's long night is ending. In the Kraxan command ship orbiting Earth, Admiral Tharkex studied the sensor data with his 6 eyes narrowed in calculation. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds, enslaved 100 species. Humans had been among the easiest, their technology primitive, their unity fractured. This unexpected development changed nothing. Analysis of the approaching vessel, he commanded in his guttural language. Mass signature suggests a ship of impossible size, Admiral, his tactical officer reported. Energy output exceeds our entire fleet combined. Configuration has been heavily modified from original human design. Tharkex's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. One ship, regardless of size, cannot stand against the might of the Kraxan Empire. Deploy the fleet in execution formation. We will destroy this ghost before it reaches the inner system. The Kraxan fleet was impressive by any standard. 90 warships, each capable of devastating a moon. They had held Earth in chains for 2 centuries, their technology so far beyond human capability that resistance had seemed futile. They moved into attack formation with practiced precision, confident in their superiority. The Prometheus continued its approach, neither slowing nor altering course. As it drew closer, Earth's hidden sensors and Europa's powerful arrays began to resolve details that defied explanation. The ship that had left Earth had been humanity's greatest achievement, a massive colony vessel wrapped in armor and bristling with weapons. What returned was something transformed. The hull gleamed with an alloy that shifted between colors, adapting to surrounding radiation. Weapon ports covered every surface, but their design was unlike anything human or Kraxan. Shield generators hummed with harmonics that suggested technologies merged from multiple sources. The ship hadn't just survived its 2 centuries lost in space. It had evolved. Admiral Hawkins stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, surrounded by a crew that represented humanity's determination to survive. Many were descendants of the original colonists, born in the spaces between stars. Others were aliens, who had joined their cause, species who had suffered under Kraxan rule and saw in humanity a chance for liberation. Distance to Earth? Hawkins asked. 48 hours at current velocity, Commander Lisa Park replied. She had been born aboard the Prometheus, had never seen Earth except in archived images. The Kraxan fleet is moving to intercept. Hawkins nodded. He had expected nothing less. The Kraxans were conquerors, but they were also predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and the fear it generated. They had never faced an enemy who had spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. Open all channels, Hawkins ordered. I want every human in the system to hear this. The communication systems activated, broadcasting on every frequency, encrypted and open. Hawkins spoke with the weight of 2 centuries behind his words. People of Earth, this is Admiral Hawkins. 200 years ago we ran. We had no choice. The Kraxans came with technology we couldn't match, with weapons we couldn't defend against. The Prometheus was meant to save a fraction of our people, to preserve humanity somewhere among the stars. Our jump drive malfunctioned. We were thrown across the galaxy, lost in regions no human had ever imagined. We should have died. He paused, letting the words sink in across the system. But we didn't die. We survived. We met other species, some hostile, some friendly. We learned from them all. We took their technology and improved it. We trained our children to be warriors and scholars, engineers and pilots. Every advancement we made, every alliance we forged, every battle we won, we did with one goal: to come home, to free our people, to show the Kraxans that humanity does not break. On Earth, humans listened in hidden shelters and slave barracks. Tears ran down faces that had forgotten how to hope. In the resistance cells, fighters gripped their weapons, tighter, feeling the spark of possibility ignite in their chests. We are 30 million strong, Hawkins continued. We bring weapons forged from technologies across the galaxy. We bring allies who have pledged to stand with us. But most importantly, we bring the promise that humanity's story is not over. Rise up. Fight. Your liberation begins now. The transmission ended, but its effects rippled across the system. On Europa, Elena began transmitting tactical data to the Prometheus. Everything the Resistance had gathered about Kraxan positions and weaknesses. On Mars, the labor camps erupted in coordinated riots. On Earth, David Chen sent a single word to every Resistance cell: Phoenix. The Kraxan fleet reached weapons range and opened fire. 90 ships unleashed their arsenal simultaneously. Energy, beams and antimatter torpedoes creating a wall of destruction. It should have been enough to vaporize any vessel, no matter how large. The Prometheus's shields absorbed the assault without strain. The defensive systems, adapted from a dozen different alien technologies and unified by human innovation, cycled through configurations faster than the Kraxan weapons could adapt. What would have destroyed the original Prometheus merely illuminated the transformed vessel in a corona of dispersed energy. "Return fire," Hawkins ordered calmly. "Secondary batteries only. Let them understand what they face." The Prometheus's response was measured but devastating. Beam weapons that phased through multiple dimensions struck Kraxan shields and simply ignored them. Kinetic rounds accelerated to near light speed punched through armor designed to withstand nuclear blasts. 5 Kraxan ships exploded in the first volley. 3 more lost power and began drifting. Admiral Tharkex watched his tactical display with growing unease. His fleet's weapons were having no effect, while the human vessel was destroying his ships with what appeared to be minimal effort. The technology gap that had guaranteed Kraxan dominance for millennia had somehow reversed. "Concentrate fire on their drive section," Tharkex ordered. "All ships, maximum firepower." The Kraxan fleet adjusted its targeting, focusing everything on what they believed was the Prometheus's weak point. The barrage was impressive, the combined energy output enough to crack a small moon. The Prometheus's shields flared brighter but held firm. Then the supercarrier launched its fighters. They poured from hidden bays like a swarm of metallic death. These weren't the crude atmospheric craft humanity had once fielded. These were true space superiority fighters, each one shielded, armed with weapons that could threaten capital ships, and piloted by humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The fighter wings carved through the Kraxan formation with surgical precision. They moved in perfect coordination, their attacks synchronized down to the millisecond. Kraxan point defense systems designed to handle predictable attack patterns couldn't track the human fighters' seemingly chaotic but carefully orchestrated movements. On Earth, the resistance struck. David Chen led the assault on the primary Kraxan command center in Berlin. Anna Petrov's team hit the power distribution nodes. Marcus Thompson coordinated attacks on communication hubs. Across the planet, 5,000 became 50,000 as civilians joined the uprising, armed with nothing but determination and whatever weapons they could find. The Kraxans on the ground were caught completely off guard. They had grown complacent after 2 centuries of absolute control. Their response was brutal but uncoordinated, each garrison fighting in isolation as their communication network collapsed. In orbit, Admiral Tharkex realized he was losing on both fronts. His fleet was down to 60 ships and falling. The Prometheus had yet to deploy its main weapons, and reports from the surface indicated a planet-wide uprising that his ground forces couldn't contain without orbital support. "Signal the retreat," Tharkex ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. "All ships fall back to the edge of the system. Request immediate reinforcements from Sector Command." The surviving Kraxan vessels broke formation and ran, their faster-than-light drives engaging in a desperate escape. The Prometheus didn't pursue. It continued its steady approach to Earth, unstoppable and inevitable. The Liberation Begins Admiral Hawkins watched the Kraxan fleet retreat with grim satisfaction. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Kraxan Empire controlled thousands of systems. They would return with a force that dwarfed their occupation fleet. "How long until they can bring reinforcements?" he asked Commander Park. "Based on our intelligence about their deployment patterns, 10 days minimum," she replied. "They'll likely send everything available in this sector. We're estimating 300 ships or more." Hawkins nodded. 10 days to liberate Earth, establish defenses, and prepare for the real battle. It would have to be enough. "Launch the drop pods," he ordered. "Captain Singh, your Marines are cleared for deployment." Captain Maya Singh stood in the deployment bay surrounded by 5,000 of humanity's finest soldiers. They wore power armor developed from technologies found across the galaxy, each suit a miniature fortress capable of enhancing strength, speed, and endurance beyond human limits. Maya had been born on the Prometheus, had trained since childhood for this moment. "Listen up," she addressed her troops. "We're about to set foot on Earth for the first time in our lives. Our parents fled as refugees. We return as liberators. The Kraxans on the ground won't surrender easily. They've held our people in chains for 2 centuries. Today we break those chains. Today humanity reclaims its home." The drop pods launched, thousands of them falling through Earth's atmosphere like shooting stars. They landed in coordinated patterns around major Kraxan installations, each pod disgorging soldiers who had trained for this specific mission their entire lives. Maya's pod struck the ground outside Paris, or what remained of it. The Kraxans had turned the City of Lights into a processing center for human laborers. She emerged from her pod with her weapon ready, her heads-up display already marking targets. The Kraxan garrison had seen the pods coming but hadn't expected the speed of the human assault. Maya's team moved through their defenses like water through a sieve. The power armor made them faster and stronger than the Kraxans, while their weapons, designed specifically to counter Kraxan technology, cut through enemy shields with ease. "Secure the detention center," Maya ordered. "Priority 1 is freeing the prisoners." Her squad breached the massive structure where thousands of humans were held. The Kraxans inside tried to use the prisoners as shields, but Maya's team employed stun weapons that could differentiate between human and Kraxan biosignatures. Within minutes, the guards were down and the cells were opening. The prisoners emerged slowly, disbelieving. Many had been born in captivity, had never known freedom. An elderly man, his back bent from decades of hard labor, approached Maya with tears streaming down his face. "Are you real?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya removed her helmet, revealing a human face marked with determination. "We're real, and we're here to stay." Similar scenes played out across the planet. In Tokyo, Commander Ken Tanaka's forces liberated the technology farms where humans were forced to maintain Kraxan machinery. In New York, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell's team freed the mining camps. In Cairo, Captain Ahmed Hassan secured the food production facilities, but it was in London where the liberation took an unexpected turn. David Chen's resistance cell had been fighting toward the primary Kraxan command center. When the drop pods landed, he watched the armored figures emerge and engage the Kraxans with weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. Within minutes, they had accomplished what his fighters had been attempting for hours. A figure in power armor approached him, weapon lowered but ready. The helmet retracted, revealing a young woman with features that reminded David of home. "David Chen?" she asked. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Jessica Wong, Prometheus Marine Corps. We're here to coordinate with your resistance." David stared at her, this soldier from the stars who spoke with a human voice but carried herself like something more. "You're really from the Prometheus?" "Born and raised," Jessica replied with a smile. "My grandparents were on the original colonist manifest. They told me stories about Earth my whole life. It's an honor to finally fight alongside you." The coordination between the Prometheus forces and Earth's resistance proved devastating to the Kraxan occupation. The locals knew every hiding spot, every weakness in Kraxan routines. The Prometheus Marines brought overwhelming firepower and technology. Together, they were unstoppable. In orbit, Admiral Tharkex tried desperately to provide support to his ground forces, but the Prometheus had moved into a blocking position. Any Kraxan ship that attempted to target the surface found itself under assault from the supercarrier's weapons. "This is impossible," Tharkex muttered, watching his empire's control over Earth crumble in real time. One ship should not be able to do this." His tactical officer approached hesitantly. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the planet. The humans aren't just liberating population centers. They're converting our own technology against us. Their technical knowledge has advanced far beyond what we expected." Tharkex realized the truth then. The humans hadn't spent 2 centuries cowering in space. They had been learning, adapting, preparing. Every piece of technology they encountered, they had studied and improved. Every tactic used against them, they had developed counters for. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. It was a culmination of humanity's refusal to surrender. On the Prometheus bridge, Admiral Hawkins received reports from the ground teams. Liberation was proceeding faster than expected. The Kraxans, so used to dealing with a beaten population, couldn't adapt to facing humans who fought with advanced technology and unbreakable determination. "Admiral," Commander Park announced, "we're detecting a massive energy buildup in the Kraxan command ship. They're preparing some kind of last resort weapon." Hawkins studied the readings. The Kraxans were channeling power into what appeared to be a planet-killer weapon, something designed to render Earth uninhabitable rather than let it be liberated. "So they'd rather destroy Earth than lose it," Hawkins said grimly. "Time to show them our main guns. All primary weapons target the Kraxan command ship. Fire." The Prometheus's true power revealed itself. Weapons that had been hidden beneath armor plating emerged and oriented on the Kraxan vessel. The beam that lanced out wasn't just energy. It was a directed gravitational anomaly that twisted space itself. The Kraxan command ship's shields, armor, and hull structure meant nothing against a weapon that fundamentally altered the physics around it. Admiral Tharkex had just enough time to realize his empire had gravely underestimated humanity before his ship collapsed into a miniature singularity and vanished. The destruction of their command ship broke the remaining Kraxan forces. Some surrendered immediately. Others tried to flee in smaller vessels, only to be intercepted by Prometheus fighters. Within 6 hours of the Marine deployment, Earth was free, but liberation was only the first step. The real work began immediately. Captain Singh established medical stations to treat humans who had suffered under occupation. Many were malnourished, injured, or sick from working in hazardous conditions. The Prometheus's medical technology, enhanced with knowledge from across the galaxy, could heal injuries that would have been fatal with Earth's old technology. Engineers from the Prometheus began converting Kraxan technology for human use. Power plants that had fed the occupation became sources of clean energy for human settlements. Manufacturing facilities were retooled to produce food, medicine, and shelter materials. David Chen found himself working alongside Jessica Wong to establish a unified Earth government. The old nations were gone, their borders meaningless after 2 centuries of occupation. Humanity needed to stand together now. "Your ship," David said during a brief rest. "How did you survive out there? How did you become this?" Jessica leaned back, her armor powered down but still wearing it like a second skin. "We almost didn't. The jump drive malfunction threw us into uncharted space. We materialized in the middle of a war between 2 alien species. Both sides tried to destroy us, but Admiral Hawkins, he was a captain then, he managed to convince them we were a neutral party seeking safe passage." She continued, "We learned their languages, their technologies. We traded human creativity and problem-solving for supplies and knowledge. Every species we met we learned from. The Altarians taught us about shield harmonics. The Zephyr Coalition showed us how to merge organic and mechanical systems. The Void Dancers, they're energy beings, they helped us understand dimensions beyond the standard 4. And you all stayed united?" 30 million people, David asked. "We had to," Jessica replied simply. "We carried the dream of returning home. Every child born on the Prometheus grew up knowing that someday we would come back for Earth. It gave us purpose. It made us strong." The conversation was interrupted by an alert. Commander Park's voice echoed across all channels. "Long-range sensors detect multiple hyperspace signatures. The Kraxan reinforcement fleet will arrive in 8 days." Admiral Hawkins convened a war council on Earth's surface, the first time he had set foot on humanity's birthworld. He stood in what had once been the United Nations building, now a ruin being hastily converted into a command center. Around him gathered the leaders of Earth's resistance and his senior officers. 8 days, Hawkins said. "We knew this was coming. The question is, are we ready?" Maya Singh reported first. "Ground defenses are being established. We're converting Kraxan orbital defense platforms for our use, but we're looking at potentially 300 ships. The Prometheus is powerful, but those odds—" "We're not alone," Hawkins interrupted. He activated a holographic display showing star maps. "During our journey we made alliances. The Coalition of Free Worlds has been fighting the Kraxan Empire for generations. They've been waiting for an opportunity to strike a decisive blow." David Chen studied the map. "You're saying we have allies coming?" "I'm saying," Hawkins replied with a grim smile, "that the Kraxans are about to learn what happens when you give humanity 200 years to prepare for war." The next 8 days were a blur of activity. The Prometheus's fabrication bays worked continuously, producing weapons and equipment. Every human who could hold a weapon was trained in its use. The children who had grown up under occupation were taught that they were free, that they had the right to remain free. Ancient Earth traditions were revived. Music that hadn't been heard for 2 centuries played in the streets. Art that the Kraxans had tried to destroy was recreated from memory and archived data. Humanity wasn't just reclaiming its planet, it was reclaiming its soul. On the 7th day, new signatures appeared on the sensors. But these weren't Kraxan. The ships that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Crystalline vessels of the Altarians, organic bioships of the Verdant Alliance, the geometric impossibilities of the Void Dancers, 15 different species, 100 ships in total, all answering humanity's call. "The coalition of free worlds stands with Earth," came the transmission from the Allied fleet. "The Kraxan Empire ends here." When the Kraxan reinforcement fleet arrived, they expected to face one rogue human vessel and a subdued planet. Instead, they found a united alliance waiting for them. The Prometheus stood at the center of the formation, no longer alone but still magnificent. The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point in galactic history. The Kraxans came with 300 ships, the might of their regional fleet. They faced 101 Allied vessels, but more importantly, they faced humanity's determination multiplied by the hope of every species that had suffered under their rule. The Prometheus led the charge, its weapons carving through Kraxan formations, while its fighters danced between enemy vessels. The coalition forces struck from multiple angles, their diverse technologies creating a chaos the rigid Kraxan doctrine couldn't adapt to. On Earth, humanity watched the sky burn with the light of liberation. Children who had been born in chains stood with their parents and witnessed the death of an empire's ambitions. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Kraxan fleet was destroyed, and with it their hold on this sector of space. The Empire would continue to exist in distant regions, but its expansion was over. Its aura of invincibility was shattered. Admiral Hawkins stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking at Earth through the viewport. It was scarred, damaged, but still beautiful. "Still home." "What now, Admiral?" Commander Park asked. "Now we rebuild," Hawkins replied. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity won't stay down. We've proven that we can stand with any species as equals. Earth is free, but our journey is just beginning." In the weeks that followed, Earth began its transformation. The technology brought by the Prometheus revolutionized every aspect of life. Cities were rebuilt with materials that could self-repair. Medical technology eliminated diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Educational systems incorporated knowledge from across the galaxy. David Chen was elected as Earth's first post-liberation president, with Jessica Wong serving as military liaison between Earth and the Prometheus fleet. Maya Singh established the Earth Defense Corps, training a new generation to ensure humanity would never again be conquered. The coalition of free worlds offered humanity full membership, recognizing them not as a rescued species but as equals who had proved their worth. The Prometheus became the flagship of a new combined fleet, with Admiral Hawkins commanding both human and alien vessels in the ongoing campaign against the Kraxan Empire's remaining strongholds. But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity itself. The occupation had nearly broken them, but liberation had revealed their true nature. Humans were survivors, innovators, and fighters. They had taken the worst the universe could throw at them and emerged stronger. On the first anniversary of liberation, Elena Vasquez stood where her Europa monitoring station had been, now transformed into a memorial for those who had kept watch during the dark centuries. She looked up at the stars, no longer searching for threats but for opportunities. Humanity had returned from the edge of extinction. They had reclaimed their world and earned their place among the stars. The galaxy had mocked Earth once, had thought humanity weak and beaten. They would not make that mistake again. The Prometheus hung in orbit above Earth, its hull gleaming with promise. Inside, 30 million souls who had wandered the stars prepared for the next chapter. They had come home as liberators. Now they would go forth as explorers, defenders, and friends to those who stood with them. Earth was free. Humanity was united, and the universe awaited.